Hi, Sleepy Hollow. How are you? We're going to read Make Way for Ducklings by Robert McCloskey. As we read this old book, let's listen for new words. Proud, suited, and planted. We know readers can use new words in sentence frames, and we'll practice using these words after the read aloud. This is a story written about two ducks, Mr. and Mrs. Mallard. They need a home to raise their children, these ducklings. And they want to make sure it's a safe home for their babies. Let's read and find out where they finally decide to bring up their children. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were looking for a place to live. But every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There were sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles. So they flew on and on. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. Next morning, they fished for their breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond, but they didn't find much. Just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people, and there was a man sitting on its back. "Good morning," quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer. So proud means you're happy with yourself. You have self-respect. The antonym for it would be embarrassed. The Spanish word, I believe, for proud is orgulloso. Orgulloso. Do you think that's a real bird, or do you think that's part of the boat? Mr. and Mrs. Mallard think that swan is real. "I like this place," said Mrs. Mallard as they climbed out on the bank and waddled along. "Why don't we build a nest and raise our ducklings right in this pond? There are no foxes and no turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better?" The people from the swan boat fed them peanuts. What could be better? "Good," said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place that suited her. So suited is one of our words, right? Suited means something is the right fit. Having the right qualities needed for something. Finally, Mrs. Mallard found a place that suited her. But, do you notice something in the picture? "Week! Look out!" squawked Mrs. Mallard all of a dither. "You'll get run over." And when she got her breath, she added, "This is no place for babies with all those horrid things rushing about. We'll have to look somewhere else." So they flew over Beacon Hill and around the State House, but there was no place there. They looked in Louisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. Boys and girls, this is where the author Robert McCloskey lived when he wrote this book. Then they flew over the Charles River. "This is better," quacked Mr. Mallard. "That island looks like a nice quiet place, and it's only a little way from the public garden." "Yes," said Mrs. Mallard, remembering the peanuts. "That looks just like just the right place to hatch ducklings. So they chose a cozy spot among the bushes near the water and settled down to build their nest, and only just in time, for now they were beginning to molt. All their old wing feathers started to drop out, and they would not be able to fly again until the new ones grew in. So there's Mrs. Mallard, there's Mr. Mallard. Their feathers are beginning to fall out. They're not going to be able to fly again till the new ones grow in. But of course they could swim, and one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and there they met a policeman called Michael. Michael fed them peanuts, and after that, the Mallards called on Michael every day. So they went to visit him every day. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs in the nest, she couldn't go visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on the eggs to keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water or to have her lunch or to count the eggs and make sure they were all there. Boy, that's hard work for a mother duck, isn't it? One day, the ducklings hatched out. First came Jack, then Cack, and then Lack, and then Mack, and Knack, and Oack, and Pack, and Quack. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them very busy. One day, Mr. Mallard decided he would take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like further on. So off he set. I'll meet you in a week in the public garden, he quacked over his shoulder. Take good care of the ducklings. Don't you worry, said Mrs. Mallard. I know all about bringing up children. And she did. She taught them how to swim and dive. She taught them to walk in a line, to come when they were called, and to keep a safe distance from bikes and scooters and other things with wheels. When at last she felt perfectly satisfied with them, she said one morning, "Come along, children, follow me." Before you could wink an eyelash, Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Oack, Pack, and Quack fell into line just as they had been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way into the water, and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. So here's one bank on this side, and here's the other bank over here. It's the land surrounding the river. They didn't go to the bank to get money, not that kind of bank. There they waded ashore and waddled along until they came to the highway. They have to cross that highway. Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Honk, honk, went the horns on the speeding cars. Quack, went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 went Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Oack, Pack, and Quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by and honking, and Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings kept right on quack, quacking. Quack, quack, quacking. What a commotion. They made such a noise that Michael came running, waving his arms and blowing his whistle. Tweet! What's Michael the policeman going to do about the ducks? He planted himself in the center of the road, raised one hand to stop the traffic, and then beckoned with the other, the way policemen do for Mrs. Mallard to cross over. Did you hear that word planted? So this isn't like a plant you see on a riverbank. It's not a green plant. He planted. He put his feet down firmly on the ground, and he didn't move them. The Officer Michael, the policeman, is stopping the traffic so that Mother Duck and her ducklings can safely cross the street, all because he planted his feet down. He put them firmly down. Officer Michael, look at him on the phone. He called Clancy at headquarters and said, There's a family of ducks walking down the street. Clancy said, "What? A family of ducks?" "What?" "Ducks," yelled Michael. "Send a police car, quick." Meanwhile, Mrs. Mallard had reached the corner bookshop and turned onto Charles Street with Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Oack, Pack, and Quack all marching in line behind her. Everyone stared. An old lady from Beacon Hill said, "Isn't it amazing?" And the man who swept the street said, "Well, now, ain't that nice?" And when Mrs. Mallard heard them, she was so proud, she tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra swing in her waddle. So this is her waddle, the way she holds her feathers in the back, the way she walks. When they came to the corner of Beacon Street, there was the police car with 4 policemen that Clancy had sent from headquarters. The policemen held back the traffic to see Mrs. Mallard and the Ducklings, to see how they could march across the street. See, they're stopping traffic. Their feet are firmly planted on the ground too. Right on into the public garden. Inside the gate, they all turned around to say thank you to the policeman. The policeman smiled and waved goodbye. When they reached the pond and swam across to the little island, there was Mr. Mallard waiting for them, just as he had promised. There he is. The Ducklings liked the new island so much that they decided to live there. All day long, they follow the swan boats and eat peanuts. So do you see how that's a swan boat? And the people on the boat throw the ducks peanuts. And when the night falls, they swim to their little island and go to sleep. And there is their new home, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed Make Way for Ducklings. This book won a Caldecott Medal long ago. I think, in fact, it might have been one of the first books. Whoop, this one doesn't have it either. It has that gold medal here. It was one of the first books to ever get one of these gold medals. Okay, let's focus on our new words. Bear with me. If you could look at proud for a moment. There's a little boy here who wrote a poem. He's really proud of his poem. Proud is when you have a lot of self-respect about something. Something you are proud of. Let's practice a sentence. I am proud of. I worked hard on. Let's think about something. I am proud of the way we can do distance learning. We worked really hard on getting on Blackboard Collaborate. That's one thing I'm proud of you, boys and girls. Let's go to another word. Suited. See how this woman loves to cook? She's really good at it. This woman is suited to become a chef. She loves cooking. She loves experimenting with new food. It's like a hobby for her. She's well suited to become a chef. The blank is best suited for. Okay, our last word is planted. So don't get fooled. Planted is not about these over here. It's not about plants. Planted is a word that means to press firmly onto something. So this woman planted her foot firmly on her yoga mat to do this pose in yoga. If her foot isn't planted firmly, she'll fall over. Here we go, friends. I firmly planted my on and refused to move. So it could be something like this. I firmly planted my feet on the ground and refused to move. What are you going to plant? What part of your body? I hope you enjoyed Make Way for Ducklings. I hope you know, boys and girls, that it's your job when you read to find new words, figure out their meaning like we did, think about what the words mean, and use them in sentences. If you practice these new words, then they will become part of your vocabulary and they won't be so hard when you're reading. And you can use them in your writing, of course, too. Okay, have a good week. Bye.